So with the inexpensive system, here's what I like is kind of the challenge of it, right? If you want that to sound good, you have to calibrate it well.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to dial stuff in, because if it's just, you know, your speakers versus, you know, speakers that are much more expensive that are also designed well, because we know there's stuff that is expensive and still pretty bad design. But like, you know, let's say your setup versus, or even my setup, I'm using Monolith Encore B6. I mean, these are pretty inexpensive speakers, right?
Yeah.
I have to calibrate them well, because if you put them up against some pretty decent KEF speakers, I mean, the KEF will probably blow them away. So
yeah,
I think you're into that, right? All the
absolutely.
calibration type of stuff.
I mean, you know, I always say like calibration is definitely like you start before you even set them up. Like you have to, like, if you want good sound out of any speaker, the room is like your worst and can be your worst enemy, right? So, but setting up those speakers in the right positioning and everything that can go a long way. And the great thing about that is when you learn on cheap speakers and you go to upgrade to more expensive speakers down the road, and you've done everything you can for your room, like, you know, like, yeah, calibration and treating that room will go so far. I know I'm kind of straying off topic, but as someone who just recently built their own acoustic panels and heard the difference for myself, it's like, it's night and day. You know, it brought out details and stuff that I never even heard, and I'm not even exaggerating. It was literally night and day.
Could anybody hear it from the kitchen? I'm just kidding. The difference. I'll buy some panels off of you for like $11. Is that a good deal?
Just trying to get a youth man deal. Dude, the shipping would cost you way more, bro.
Sorry, Joe. No youth man deals here. No youth man deals.
$11.
$11.
Actually, go ahead.
Go ahead, Shauna. Go ahead.
All you. Talk about myself. That's all. No, go ahead. That's questions. Yeah. I know.
Who's on first?
I was just gonna say, I'm lucky. I actually I had this studio built and already foamed to the, like, there's even foam here. This is all just this whole, my hand. This whole thing is all extra foam. Like, I have 2 Auralux studio kits that I put in here because this is a music studio before I ever made any YouTube videos. And since we also have carpet on the ground here, and when I put in my 11-channel system here, I was just like, oh man, this is so much better than my living room. Like, I don't even want to watch anything up there. It's so bad because the equipment price in here is a lot cheaper than what's upstairs. So
it's just the correct setup, right? Good,
correct
good
shape. My upstairs is all disjointed and, you know, screwy. But that's when like things like Dirac Live really come into play, when your room is not perfect, and it also the Magic Beans as well. You know, far like go way better than Wipeout and standard Odyssey, because my room's like messed up. So
I'm curious, Brad, do you run Odyssey? Like, how do you run your system when it comes to calibration? Do you use like the multi-QX?
Yeah. No, actually, no, I don't use multi-EQ or multi-QX, whatever it's called. I haven't delved into that $200 piece of software yet. But I do run Odyssey, just through the app, like the multi-EQ editor app. But I go, like, you know, you run it and then you go in and like I disable sub correction completely because I do everything myself through the mini DSP. And then it took me a while to find, like, I run curtains on all my speakers. So like I only have Odyssey correcting up to, I think, 500 or 600 hertz in my room. In this house, in the other house, I did it up to 1,000 because that sounded and measured the best overall. So yeah, I think just that $20 additional purchase, while it sucks, improved my sound like tenfold just by doing that. Like,
by not letting it correct certain things, right? Like don't get to
even being able to go in and like, I mean, I'll be honest, for like trying to make fine-tune adjustments on the multi-EQ editor app, even on like a big iPad, it's awful, man. Even with like an Apple Pencil, like you have to use like I started using something, or started looking into something called Rat Buddy, on the
Right, Budsy, yeah.
Buddhist or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even that, it's kind of like, oh, it's cool, but like I could never get it to like get to a point where I felt comfortable enough making a video about it because I could never get it to function. Same with multi-sub
Yeah.
optimizer. You and I were talking about that. I've used it numerous times and I've never been completely happy with the results outside of what I
Yeah.
can do manually myself.
Yeah, I can get pretty good results, but you can mess up a lot of stuff there too and make it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's gotten a lot
Rat
better though. It used to
Buddisy-
be.
Rat Buddisy is tricky because I think it says right there, like if it could mess up your system like somehow, but it's not our fault. So I'm
Yeah.
like,
I've never heard of that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to take that risk.
Yeah, it's a
mess
very
up my
basic, like, or not to say basic, but it's a very, it's free, but it's very rough around the edges, in my opinion. Like trying to get it to, like, there's a lot of stuff that you just have to figure out yourself. I felt like because I'm like, okay, well, if I add this point here and that point here, yeah, it's kind of difficult. So
Yeah, I think multi-QX is worth it. I think you're gonna enjoy it. If you get it, it just turns your AVR into basically a mini DSP filter bank. It's like
really,
put in your PEQs. I like it.
the thing that
But you're-
stopped me from
for
actually
all channels. you know?
Yeah. The thing that stopped me from, I'd reach out to Odyssey to see if they would, grant me a license just to do a review
Look it
because
up.
look, I'm like, look, I've reviewed Dirac Live, your competitor. Let me review, and then I can compare them. But I never heard back, and I didn't like that it was tied to one receiver. So like, since I'm upgrading soon, or might be upgrading soon, I don't want to like purchase it now and then have to purchase it again. Yep. $200 is, that's $400 right there.
Yeah.
So.
I think they have like some kind of program right now for installers though, where it isn't required that you attach it to an email and Microsoft account.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. You should email them again because I think that's pretty new.
Okay.
But yeah, I love that. I think that really changed up the whole game for me. But yeah, that $20 app was not good, especially if you really wanted to get 80 hertz specifically. It's gonna be like 82, 83.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yep. I think I'm doing 501 hertz curtains right now because they can't get 500.
Right.
But it's really, honestly, it's great if you want to disable mid-range compensation. If you want to limit curtains to a certain, you know what I mean? Like it's very basic in its functionality. But what I found is it's still like, even though you completely remove the correction from the sub, there's still a little bit of they do a little bit to it. So like if you measure
Something.
it
There's a
without
little
it and then with it and then without it, it's like, yeah, something's going on, but it's honestly negligible. It's just my OCD is like, I don't want this changed at all. Odyssey, don't touch it. Touch it.
yes, I hear. So, now we talked about some videos that you're proud of that maybe didn't do so well, and that happens, right? Michael, Aaron, all of us, we kind of talk about videos where like you think it's going to be a hit, and you spent time, you
Poured your
put
heart
in
and
work,
soul in that.
Yeah.
and then you get the views, and you're like, oh, what's up with that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I asked you, you said it was the one. What was it about?
Why is is something like
Yeah.
why is calibration so important, or is calibration necessary, or something like that? It was a
Yeah.
while ago, and
This one right here. Is calibration really that?
is calibration really that important? Yeah.
Got the nice thumbnail right there. It kind of looks familiar. Okay.
Oh yeah, that was my that was my. I was going through my Andrew Robinson phase, trying to do my thumbnails like him. So
That's
yeah,
why
no,
it didn't do well, huh?
that's probably why. No, I mean that. Chana and his Roadcaster. We need to get you some new sounds, man.
Yeah,
Just a little stock sound effects. Yeah, I made that video because I would get comments of people just like, why, like, what is an SPL meter? Like, why is this even important? Like, this is just too much, right? And I'm like, well, you're on a home theater centric channel. I mean, it's in the name. So I would hope that like you would at least want to learn a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Come here and learn a little bit. And this was just a video where I was like trying to explain, look, like you could spend all this money in the world and throw your speakers in a room and they sound like garbage.
Yeah.
So you can, spend $4,000 on a OLED display and run it in vivid mode, and it's not gonna. I mean, you can, but for if you want to get the most out of it, and it's also the calibration is really difficult as like the internet has become so popular. People can go on YouTube and learn how to do some of the stuff themselves. But there's also a lot of I don't want to say misinformation, but like what's part of that video is like, what's the point of calibration? And it's like, okay, movies are, mastered to a certain standard on the audio and video side. So if your goal is to make your display and your audio system sound as close to, what the stuff is being mixed on and what the stuff is being color corrected on and things like that, then yeah, calibration, like that's kind of the whole point. But then you can take it a step further. It's like, here's my baseline, right? But I want a little more bass, or I might want a little more brightness, or I might want a little more color. So you know where the baseline is, and you know how to make those adjustments higher than that. Does that make sense? I see Joe's face, and I was like, did I say something wrong?
No, it's not that. It's so real quick. Why are you proud of that? Like, did you spend a lot of time doing something in particular? Like, because it seemed very well scripted. Like, it's very smooth.
Yeah, I mean, that was like one of those
stuff, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I normally use a teleprompter for most things. So, and I think that was one of those videos where like I scripted it out because I'm like, this is, I've been passionate about calibration stuff for basically since I got into home theater. And so it was kind of like that passion project for me where I'm like, people are going to like this video. They're going to learn some stuff, I hope, from it. And they're going to understand like why, when I pay someone $500 and they leave, I think my display looks worse because I'm used to watching it in vivid. Like I was trying to explain like why
there's that fine line of like, you see it in all the Facebook groups, you see it in, everywhere, like, oh, are you going to get it calibrated? I got this new TV. Yeah, you're going to get it calibrated. And they're like, I got this calibration and this looks dull. This looks like real life. Like they wanted to, everybody wants that cartoony. And that's why Samsung is still the number one TV selling brand in the United States, because they have that. Like, even walking into the 4K TV shootout last year, right? I was a judge. I walk in and I'm like, God, that looks great. That must be the Samsung. And I just said and I walked up. I'm like, yeah, that's the Samsung. And like, I did vote for it on a few items, but closer inspection, when you're like nitpicking tiny details, it starts to show its flaws. But walking into the room, I see 5 panels in front of me. I'm like, oh, that looks great. It's got to be the Samsung. It's just one of those things. So everybody's used to that. And then when you actually do the calibration, some people are like, yeah, I liked it the other way.
Why'd you turn my sharpness all the way down?
But the best part is vivid mode is still there if they want to use it.
Right. You can switch back to this when you want to, or hey, you paid $500. What you do with your set after I leave is up to you.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of crazy. Like when I was reviewing TVs, I was like, you know what? It's going to be better if I give my opinion on the TV if it's after it's calibrated. So that at least, like you're saying, there's a baseline for each TV. So then I spent, $2,500 on calibration equipment and spent like, 7 or 8 days on the phone with the guys at Portrait Displays.
Oh yeah.
And like, he was just using TeamViewer to see what's on my computer. And I had the TV in front of me, and he's like, okay, let's take these readings. And this is why we take these, these readings. And then we do it in this order and all this. And I was just taking notes, and he was so nice. He's helped me. He just taught me how to calibrate over the phone. It's so weird.
That's crazy. Yeah. What I will say, like, I've started diving more into video calibration now that I got the LG C1. And personally, to me, that display in particular of all the OLEDs, really that series, the C1 and the G1, definitely need a little bit of help in the shadow detail department, because they do crush blacks pretty,
just a little bit,
pretty, right out of the box. So, I went the cheap route. I was like, what can a $500 purchase get you with a cheap $200 or $300 colorimeter or colorimeter or whatever you call it, and Calman Home for LG. And man, like, it just amazes me how calibration has come so far, where like, especially with the way that talks to each other, it's kind of like an automatic process almost. It can be like with AutoCal. Will you get like professional results? No, I mean, you're not spending, $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 on a Klein, meter.
I mean, honestly, I think it's more of the time, right? And certain TVs are just bad. Samsung game mode, looks booty. Oh,
Yeah.
It took me about 7 hours
Booty.
to get HDR game mode
Oh.
to look good. First,
Yeah.
I got it to like where it should be at reference level for the grayscale and for the color, but the picture just looked like ass. Like it looked so bad that I actually had to change all kinds of things and then kept diving into the menus and finally got something that looked great. But it just took that much time, and that's something AutoCal is not going to do. And for the majority of game modes, majority of calibrators won't even touch game mode because it's already like spiking way too much blue. So you had there's a lot to that's a lot. It's just a lot of work. You know, they don't want to be at your house for 12 hours. Like I wouldn't want somebody at my house for 12 hours either.
Yeah, running through all of
Especially Joe.
Michael came over one time. No, diving into the whole Kalman calibration stuff is like, I basically had 6 modes to calibrate. So like standard dynamic range, HDR10, and Dolby Vision, but then all of the game modes for each. And luckily, they all turned out great. The only downside is when you calibrate Dolby Vision that way, without an external pattern generator, you can't see the before and after. You know, like you could take the pre-calibration measurements and then the post-cal with, you know, HDR10 or standard dynamic range and see the difference of what the calibration made. Well, Dolby Vision, you're like, I guess it's right. I don't know. Dolby Vision is still like hard to calibrate.
Yeah. Even manually, it's not easy. So, sometimes, like if you go virtual or perceptual, there's different types of Dolby Vision. Yeah, like what the software is sent to the pattern generator. So you know you got to figure all that out too.
Far more complicated than it used to be. I used to calibrate just standard dynamic range displays like 10, 12 years ago, and it still took a while, but like you didn't have all these, you know, the EOT, like you hadn't have to worry about like the EOTF and all that. Like the HDR and Dolby Vision add another level of complexity on top of, you know, calibration, which is already complex enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, is this what you're talking about when you told me that you're doing some kind of HDR analysis? Is this
no? So actually, it's not anything with that. No, basically, I figured out a way to take screenshots off of like an Xbox or PlayStation. And in HDR and bring it into the PC and use software to actually analyze, like, you know, what's the peak brightness, like, and that's actually been really kind of instrumental in the past couple videos I've done about HDR settings on video games, because with video games, I'm actually doing a live stream coming up Friday night with a friend of mine. And it's basically HDR gaming is a complete mess. There's no standard like there is for movies. You know, most movies on a disc or through streaming can look pretty good, but with gaming, it's all over the place. It's like some games look great out of the box. Other games you need to go like, why are my black levels raised? Like, what's going on? A lot of games are just fake HDR, straight up.
All right. So big question.
Sure.
What do you? How do you view, or what do you think of HGIG?
Oh, so
what are you guys even talking about?
HGIG. I don't know the technical name for it, but essentially it is a way for you to turn the display's tone mapping completely off, like disable it completely. And so, like on the Xbox Series X, Series S, I even think like the One X,
the One X,
the PS5, they have HDR calibration screens within the system level. So you go in and you set those up. And then theoretically, right? You go into a game and like, oh, you're going to get a great HDR experience, but not every game supports that system level calibration, which is why settings videos do so well on the internet.
Yeah.
So you were gonna...
basically, Joe, this is what's happening, and everybody else watching. There's 2 HDRs happening if you on certain games. So like there's the one from the system, and then the TV's like, oh, this has HDR. Let's spruce it up. So when you turn on HGIG, you turn off the TV's one
and just let the game
and let the console do it. So that the picture will look normal.
Yeah, and LG's settings are kind of confusing because they list 3 different modes. It's called HDR tone mapping, right? And Chani, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So it's like I don't think it applies to Dolby Vision because you can't change anything there. But with HDR10, it's tone mapping on, tone mapping off, and then HGIG. You think tone mapping off is just you're disabling tone mapping. No, you're just doing a static tone map at like what the display can reproduce. So it's going to clip at, or it's going to roll off at like 800 nits on like an LG C1, but like it's not going to hard clip anything above that. So you could still set it to like 2000 or 3000 and it'll still tone map that down to the capabilities of the display. How far into this like techie nerdy stuff do you guys want to get?
I don't know. Reggie says, boy, this guy Brad seems to know what he's talking about.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm very passionate. I do a lot of research, hours and hours.
Let me drop links
you know,
to his channel here in the chat so you guys can go
there will definitely be one on the final video. I already put it.
Oh, okay.
Also. But what I like is that you kind of found like a workaround. You know, I like to think of myself as a hacker. You know what I mean? Like I can figure stuff out, and I try to do stuff that the system's not supposed to do, almost. Right?
I mean,
like the fact that you're taking screenshots from there and then analyzing those, kind of like a workaround to try to get the information that you want, but they didn't provide it. You know, you have to figure out a way to get it. You know what I mean?
And it's cool because you can take it, and I've actually learned this from watching other videos, and it's like a free viewer on Windows that you bring it into. It's like in the Microsoft, it's called like HDR image viewer or something, but it's cool. It'll tell you can even look at heat maps of like the HDR, like, you know, where the peak, like, so you can tell if a game supports that system level calibration or not. So if you intentionally set that system level calibration up on like an Xbox wrong, and then you take a screenshot and then you set it up correctly, well, it'll tell you, okay, it's either going to recognize that those settings or not. And you instantly be able to tell because the peak brightness will be like, what?
You guys are funny. The Reggie seal of approval. Even Joe hasn't gotten that yet. That's true.
Look at that. Good job, Brad.
Thank you. I don't even know what that means, but I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Reggie busts all our butts. So for him to say, man, Brad's a good dude.
Yeah.
That's a big compliment.
All right. If you would like to join us every week on Mondays at, what time is it? About 6 p.m. Central, which is the best time. That's where I am. Make sure you join us at youtube.com/Daily HiFi. We out.